Welcome to On Texas Football. Breaking news, Gerry Hamilton. Rodney Terry is out as Texas basketball coach after finishing this season 19-16. He was 62-37 overall as Texas head coach after taking over for Chris Beard, who was fired after a incident at his home. Kind of took the reins, led Texas to a Elite Eight, but ever since then, it's kind of been a little bit worse and worse. Last year, round of 32. This year, did not get out of the first four play-in game or in the NCAA tournament. Rodney Terry, no longer the head coach at the University of Texas. Gerry Hamilton, what are your thoughts on where they go from here?
Yeah, look, I think it's direction of program, clearly. I mean, Rodney Terry won 4 NCAA tournament games, made 3 straight NCAA tournaments. I think Texas was one of only 8 teams to make maybe the last 4 NCAA tournaments, but it still comes down to the direction of program. He took over, he did an admirable job around the firing and dismissal of Chris Beard to keep that team together, to make that run to the Elite Eight, and could have been potentially the Final Four. It would have been if Disu doesn't get hurt, right? I think since then it was more treading water, right? I mean, when you're hired, Ron Holland decides to go to the G League. A.J. Johnson, 2 5-star recruits, decides to go play in Australia. Both those guys are first-round picks last year, by the way. So it was pretty much treading water since that time, putting a roster together. Did a great job recruiting Trey Johnson. I mean, a great job recruiting Trey Johnson. Beat out Baylor. It really came to Texas and Baylor, but also Kansas and Arkansas and Kentucky and everybody in the country. He did a really good job there. I think Chris Ogden did a really good job as the GM, keeping this thing afloat. Texas, it got to where they had enough NIL funds to compete, and they pieced together, I thought, a quality roster going in this year, much better roster than year one in Rodney when they lost to Tennessee. But look, it's direction of program. It's the excitement in the Moody Center or lack thereof. A bunch of bad home losses this year. That affects your fan base. A little apathy sets in. When you start losing home games and you get blown out and you don't look competitive against UConn and Alabama. Now, you're competitive against Auburn and Tennessee, but there were some games at home you're down 20 to A&M and had to make the big second half comeback. There were some times, there were some losses in there, 6 home losses in the SEC play, 7 on the season, counting the UConn game, which was never close. There was just too many direction of programs going the wrong way, especially considering the conference you just moved into and 14 NCAA tournament bids, and you were the 14th. And you were the 3rd to last team in the SEC. You were 6-12, and you got in because you play in a great conference. The problem is that when the direction of the program is not going the right direction, it's really tough for CDC and the brass at Texas to say, yeah, we're ready to compete with Nate Oates and Todd Golden and John Calipari and Bruce Pearl and Mark Pope when he's going to get it going at Kentucky because he's a really good offensive coach. Rick Barnes. It's hard to say that the program was going to be headed in the right direction, and that's where we're at.
Especially since every year is a rebuild.
Yes.
In college basketball, it's not like football where actually you do have some players that carry over. Very few players actually carry over in basketball comparatively, and fewer players play because it's a 5-man sport versus a 22-starter sport in football. So I think that, to your point, this was a situation where this was a team built by and selected by Rodney Terry, unlike the previous 2 teams, I think, that had a lot of leftovers. What's the right word? Carryover from the Chris Beard era. And he went backwards instead of forwards with his own guys. That was probably one of the big issues that Rodney Terry had. Gerry, as we talk about this, and we wish him well, certainly he was a really good guy. Everybody says the same thing about Rodney Terry. Great dude. I mean, there's not a person that has a bad word for him. You look at this Texas job now. Is it an attractive job to college coaches around there if they're willing to spend the money to make this happen?
I 100% think it is. And if you want an opinion better than mine, Jay Wright on the pregame talked about how the SEC is an attractive job for coaches because it was a 14-bid league. you're going to get in the NCAA tournament if you're good in the SEC. Heck, 2, 6, and 12 teams got in the NCAA tournament this year. Jay Wright talked about how the SEC is becoming a destination for college basketball coaches because they know you have a really good path to the NCAA tournament. So I think Texas, with the Moody Center, I think the talent in the state of Texas. Now, that's not what it used to be because you don't have 5- and 6-man recruiting classes in high school anymore. You're going to have 2- or 3-man recruiting classes. But
at most,
you're going to have the Moody Center. You have the SEC. I'm going to get you to talk about the investment we think Texas is willing to make in this next coach, because that's going to tell you who your candidates are in reality. But I think the conference, I think the Moody Center, I think Austin, I think the talent in the state of Texas, if you pick off 2 guys, really talented players in the state of Texas nowadays, they're NBA players. They're going to be young, they're going to be fresh, but they're going to be NBA players, no different than Trey Johnson. And we talked about earlier, Ron Hollandwood is an NBA player. He never made it to campus. So if you pick those guys off, you're getting 2 NBA players a year out of the state of Texas, or draft picks, or pro basketball players. But then it's a worldwide brand. One of the things I think about Texas, where Texas has never gone where I thought they could, Bobby, I think they can be a really strong international recruiting program because they're a worldwide brand. And it's never really truly been tapped into on a high level. Go look at how Mark Few with Tommy Lloyd built Gonzaga. Look at what Sean Miller did at Arizona. Calipari's doing that at Arkansas. He just got a big-time guy from overseas. Texas, because of their brand, can recruit at a high level internationally. I think Texas is a sleeping giant in college basketball, and I have for years. I think Texas, with the right hire and the right follow-through and the right NIL investment, can have a program similar to Florida. I'll believe it until I die if it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, look, the question I have is, do you want a guy, and this is a fair question, do you want young players in this day and age of college basketball, or you want a junior, senior laden team that has proven they can put points on the board as opposed to just promising young freshmen? I think that's a fair question, given what we know about college basketball. As it relates, Jerry, you asked me that question about finances. Texas is willing to spend money in basketball. I don't know if they're willing to spend a lot of money on buyouts, which some of these more attractive coaches are going to have large buyouts. The numbers I was told, don't expect any high buyouts. And by high, $8 million plus. Just don't expect Texas to go there. There's enough basketball coaches out there they think they can get without having to tip the scales that much. That being said, they are willing to pay a hefty salary. They're not as concerned about that. So it is one of those scenarios right now where Texas, I think, has what it takes and has the right mindset to make a good hire here. To your point, I think it's imperative that this hire be one that can fill it up on offense.
Yes.
I think that is ultimately the one thing that I almost think all Texas fans would agree on, based on what we've heard and thought about, and where the SEC maybe as a whole and college basketball as a whole is going right now. Rodney Terry, more of a defensive coach.
Yes. Yeah. Rodney Terry built his career on being a tremendous recruiter and defensive coach. When Chris Beard was hired at Texas, he brought in Rodney Terry as associate head coach. Rodney Terry was over defensive game plans and brought those to Chris Beard. And then together, they built their final plan. Rodney Terry coached defense. That's what he was brought in to do. And then in today's day and age, we've talked about it many times here on Coffee and Football or shows. I know I mention it all the time. This is an offensive day and age in sports, and it certainly is in basketball. And the NBA game's trickling down to the college game, and you have to be able to score the ball at a high rate. And look no further than the SEC this year with Todd Golden and Nate Oates. Even Bruce Pearl, when he's got good shooters with his style of play, what Mark Pope is going to do at Kentucky. But if you really look at Auburn, Florida, and Alabama, and that's who you want to be in the SEC in basketball and nationally, you have to score. I mean, Texas lost 84-60 in Gainesville. They lost 103-80 in Moody to Alabama. They lost 87-85, maybe right around there to Auburn. You have to be able to score 90 in this league to win consistently against the best teams.
Well, I got to say this. Xavier's not any great shakes as far as athleticism or future NBA players. They put up 86 on Texas.
That's the type of offensive coach Texas needs, Sean Miller, that level guy. Whether it's Sean Miller or not, they need that level offensive coach.
All right. Once again, Rodney Terry is out as Texas men's basketball coach. Terry ends his career at the University of Texas with a 62-37 record. But this year was a real fall off. He finishes 19-16 and 14th out of 16 teams in the SEC, to Jerry's point. Just not the direction Texas and Chris Del Conte want to be taking the program at this point. Good luck to Rodney Terry and him as he moves forward in his career. All right, that's going to do it. Rodney Terry, again, out. That's Texas basketball coach. For Gerry Hamilton, I'm Bobby Burton. We'll have more on this developing story later on. Hook 'em.